On April 7th, a Texas judge issued a ruling saying that the FDA needed to withdraw its approval of the abortion medication pill mifepristone, which has been safe and on the market for 23 years. But he did so under the 1873 Comstock Law. So this is for all of you wondering what the hell that is. So Anthony Comstock was basically someone who was horrified by pornography and vice, and he believed that if contraception was legal, it would lead people to do bad things, to be lustful and lascivious. So in 1873, he convinces the federal government to pass the Comstock Law, which defines all contraception and abortion information as obscene and bans any obscene material from being sent through the mail or across state lines. So it basically makes birth control illegal if it's being sent through the mail or across state lines. Other states pass their own versions of these things, making contraception basically illegal within those states. Comstock becomes a special agent for the U.S. Postal Service. He will arrest people. They will serve massive prison time, big fines for violating this thing. One of the women he arrests is Ezra Heywood for her book, Cupid's Yoke, which argues that women should be able to control their own bodies. And the courts ask, would any part of this work corrupt minds open to moral influence? They say yes, so she is convicted. He will also arrest doctors for writing explanations of how pregnancy works and what can be done to prevent it. So if that is sent through the mail or across state lines, it is illegal under the Comstock Act. Margaret Sanger, of course, the mother of the birth control movement, begins pushing against this in the early 20th century. In 1919, she opens an illegal birth control clinic testing these laws, and we end up with the Crane decision that says that birth control can be legal if prescribed by doctors and for therapeutic purposes, which mainly means for disease prevention. In 1929, we get an expansion on this, that spacing out between births is a legitimate medical treatment that can be part of that therapeutic measure. Then in 1936, we have a case called U.S. versus One Package, which is U.S. versus One Package of Japanese pessaries, which are a form of barrier method birth control. And this is Sanger again. She is violating the Tariff Act of 1930, which has incorporated some of that Comstock Law that declares all contraception illegal. And so the courts come back and actually say that doctors are not applicable to this, that they can still send birth control information and birth control itself, both through the mail and interstate, and they can bring it into the country, that it does not apply to doctors. And that's a really big deal. The next big case is Griswold versus Connecticut in 1965, in which the state of Connecticut arrests Estelle Griswold, the executive director of Planned Parenthood, for distributing contraception. The Supreme Court finds that law to be unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional to restrict access to birth control because it interferes with a married woman's right to privacy. And as of Griswold, Comstock is dead. Comstock dies in 1965 because of the Griswold ruling. But of course, Dobbs overturns Roe, which is based on the same thing as Griswold. And now we have a Texas judge trying to revive Comstock. Yay. So we've just done the rundown of the Comstock laws through Griswold versus Connecticut, 1965, in which the Supreme Court finds a right to privacy in the 14th Amendment that protects access to birth control and birth control information for married couples. That will be expanded to single women and men as well. Basically, Comstock is considered dead as of Griswold versus Connecticut, 1965, despite the fact that this Texas judge is now trying to revive both. Now remember, in 1973, we get Roe versus Wade, which again extends this right to privacy to married couples and to individuals as well, and says that the state cannot just unilaterally ban abortion. It sets up a trimester system in which abortion is legal in the first trimester. It can be regulated but not eliminated in the second trimester of pregnancy, and then it can basically be eliminated, but with options for a woman's health and life in the third trimester. That gets rolled back a little bit in Casey v. Planned Parenthood, in which we get the viability option, in which before the point of viability in which a fetus can live outside the body, abortion can be regulated but not eliminated, and then after that it can be eliminated with, again, exceptions for a woman's life or health, which really work out well for a woman who's already that ill in pregnancy. And of course, that is then overturned by Dobbs, which basically argues there is no right to privacy, and that, of course, is the foundation of Griswold as well. So women's access to birth control legally in the United States is on very shaky footing at the moment because the Supreme Court argues that that reasoning doesn't actually exist, doesn't hold up. And now we have that Texas judge reviving Comstock, in essence agreeing to regulate abortion via commerce. Now there's several irregularities in the case. For one, it doesn't have a traditional standing of the people who brought suit. These are doctors who are claiming that other patients' doctors might be harmed by this and it might cause this drastic problem in the medical field and in our hospitals, even though this thing's been legal for 23 years and that hasn't happened. The judge also includes a lot of pro-life rhetoric as fact. He includes constitutional fetal personhood in his decision, which is basically the idea that the Equal Protection Clause applies to embryos and fetuses. And when you combine fetal personhood with Comstock, it is really easy to see how we get a federal, nationwide abortion ban out of this. So it is very, very important to pay attention. We have a dueling injunction coming out of Washington state that basically tells the FDA they're not allowed to pull mifepristone from the market as a safe drug. So we've got these two ideas butting heads. This will likely end up at the Supreme Court, of course. But if the court sides with Texas, we may end up in a constitutional crisis on how to respond to basically an illegitimate and illegal ruling based on blatantly false science and medicine and a really bad understanding of history while we're at it.